The Holyoke Building, or Holyoke Block, is a historic building located in downtown Seattle, Washington. It is a substantial five-story brick structure with stone trimmings. Construction began at the corner of First Avenue and Spring Streets just before the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. Completed in early 1890. It was the first permanent building completed and ready for occupancy in downtown Seattle. Following the fire, today the Holyoke Building is one of the very few such buildings still standing in Seattle outside of the Pioneer Square district, and is a historic remnant of the northward expansion of Seattle's business district between the time of the Great Fire and the Yukon Gold Rush in 1897. The Holyoke Building housed many social and artistic clubs and organizations throughout its history. As early as 1895 it housed the Conservatory of Arts on the top floor. Later in the 1920s the Seattle Musical Club brought many local artists and musicians together in the building, and other private and social clubs shared the building with toiletry manufacturers and offices. The Holyoke Building is a subdued example of the Victorian commercial style with elements of Romanesque style, and remains almost completely intact from when it was built, even down to the storefronts, which had been altered over time but have now been restored. Following this restoration in 1975 by the building's owner Harbor Properties, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1976 and became a City of Seattle landmark in 1978. History. Early history. 1889 to 1930. The Holyoke Building takes its name from Richard Holyoke, 1836 to 1905, a native of New Brunswick, Canada, who immigrated to the Puget Sound region in 1860 to gain a foothold in the burgeoning timber industry, establishing a lumber mill at Seebeck. His venture was a success and he began purchasing large amounts of Seattle property to show his faith in the area's future. Holyoke became a prominent community figure and a major booster for local lumber. He established and became the first president of the National Bank of Commerce, later Rainier Bank, in Seattle, which would become one of the region's biggest banks in the 20th century. Construction began on the foundation of Holyoke's new business block in late spring of 1889. The building was designed by Seattle architects Thomas G. Bird and George W. Dornbach, who worked together only briefly in 1889. At the time of the fire, excavation on the site was underway and the large pit acted as a fire stop and helped keep the fire from advancing further north. Originally designed to be 4 stories tall, the plans were revised to 5 in the wake of the fire. Construction progressed and the building was soon being called by local papers one of the largest buildings in town. The ground floor, with 16 feet high ceilings, was divided into 2 storefronts facing First Avenue. Following the slope of the site, a third storefront was located at the rear of the building facing Spring Street along with the building's main entrance. The upper floors, designed for offices, including those of attorneys, seamstresses and the co-architect Bird himself, each had 13 feet ceilings. Some of the building's earliest major tenants included the Conservatory of Music on the top floor, and a furniture store, and a carpet store that occupied the corner of the first and most of the second floor. Suffering financial reversals as a result of the Panic of 1893, Holyoke divested himself of all his Seattle property, including the Holyoke Building. He moved to Skagit County, where he operated a farm in the early 1900s. He moved to Bellingham in 1905, where he remained until his death at the age of 70. In November 1900, the building was purchased by Anton Stander, who had struck it rich during the Yukon Gold Rush. Stander's wife, who had convinced him to buy the property, would sue him for the building in 1906 during the couple's scandalous and highly publicized divorce in 1906. Unable to fill all of the building's office space, subsequent owners leased entire floors as lofts at light manufacturing firms, the Northwest Fixture and Electric Company, who during the gold rush supplied miners with electric motors and generators for mining and lighting, occupied the upper floors between 1894 and 1900. J. Kobe and Company manufactured toiletries on the fifth floor until moving to their own building in 1923. In the 1920s, the Holyoke became a gathering place for Seattle musicians and artists. The Robert Morris Social Club held regular dances in the building. The Seattle Musical Club gathered in the building, and suites on the building's second floor were used for practice runs and discussions. Among the musicians who gathered there were Vaughn Arthur, violinist, Rose and Frank Egan, founders of the Egan School in Los Angeles, and Nellie Cornish, who later founded her own art school in Seattle. Other social clubs opened up in the building, including the Lonesome Club that advertised strangers and lonely people welcome. Quote, restoration to the current day. Over the years, little had been done to alter the building's facade. The storefronts were modernized and a fire escape was added to the north facade, all of which have since been undone, likely as a result of the 1949 Olympia earthquake. Most of the granite that originally finished the building's brick cornice has been removed following its induction into the National Register in 1975. The Holyoke Building's owners, Harbor Properties, owned by prominent Seattleite Stimson Bullitt, proposed a nearly $1 million renovation that would convert the then mostly vacant building into a vibrant mix of air-conditioned offices and shops. Architect Olson, Walker Associates, who had also designed the restoration of the Maynard Building in Pioneer Square, proposed to cut the inside of the building in half with a large interior landscaped courtyard. For Harbor Properties, who were better known for demolishing historic buildings such as the Arlington Hotel, this project was a first. See also National Register of Historic Places listings in Seattle, Washington. List of landmarks in Seattle. Further reading. Kreisman, Lawrence. 1985. Historic Preservation in Seattle. Seattle. Historic Seattle Preservation and Development Society. Oxner, Jeffrey Carl. 1994. Shaping Seattle Architecture. A Historical Guide to the Architects. Seattle. University of Washington Press. p. 339. ISBN 0-295-97366-8. Warren, James. 1989. The Day Seattle Burned. June 6, 1889. Seattle. James R. Warren. Holyoke Building. Spring Street. Southeast corner of First Avenue. N. D. University of Washington Special Collections Division.